do you think about when someone says Christmas? Is it pretty lights, family, Santa? Maybe it's the Christmas tree. Well, from now on, you're going to be thinking of blood, guts, and gore, because today we're going to be taking a look at some of the best and worst Christmas horror movies. I asked you guys to send me some of your favorite holiday scary movies, and you guys delivered. I chose 20 of the most requested, best looking, and some that I just thought looked funny movies to rank today in this video. So if your recommended movie didn't make the cut, I apologize. But there are just so many different Christmas horror movies that I might have to make a part 2 next year. And lastly, this is my opinion, so you might not like a few things I have to say about your favorite horror movie. So feel free to yell at me in the comments. I will not be reading it. Also, spoilers for every movie on this list. Now, let's quit yapping and get into it.
Christmas, most magical time of year.
A Christmas Horror Story is a movie that was released in 2015, and it's an anthology film that follows 4 stories simultaneously. Kind of like the Halloween movie Trick or Treat. One story follows a group of teenagers who are investigating a school where 2 people sadly got murdered. While they're investigating, they get locked in the basement. And the girl Molly gets possessed by an angry spirit that wants her to have its unborn child. The next story follows a family and they go on private property to get their very own Christmas tree. After they pick and saw down their tree, their son goes missing in the woods. But luckily they find him hiding in another tree, so they all just get together and go home. But they start to notice their son is acting a little strange and he's not talking at all. His mom gets a call from the owner of the property and he tells her that she brought a changeling home and she needs to bring it back before something bad happens to the family. And she doesn't believe him, but I'll let you witness for yourself all the bad stuff that happens. The third story follows a family that's just terrible. The son Duncan is a pain in the ass who just likes to kill animals for fun. And the father Taylor likes to do some pretty shady business deals in order to keep him and his family rich. And the mother Diane doesn't have a specific one, but she does have a huge lack of Christmas spirit, and I have a feeling she's a bit greedy. And finally, the daughter Caprice is a kleptomaniac and she just can't seem to stop herself. While visiting a family member, their car breaks down in the woods and they start getting hunted down by Krampus himself. Good lord, that's a buff Krampus! Finally, the last story follows Santa Claus as he's getting ready for the big night. His elves start getting a little sick, and strangely, one by one, they become elf zombies. And sadly, he has to defeat all of them in order to save Christmas. Or is it all in his head? This movie honestly surprised me a whole lot. I've never watched it because the cover looks really goofy and it honestly just turned me off of it. So I'm really glad you guys recommended it for me because I would have never watched this. It's really good and easy to follow despite it having 4 stories happening simultaneously. And the twists for all the stories were really good, especially that last one. And the makeup, costume design, and music were all killer in this movie. No pun intended. I personally liked the changeling story the most. The kid did a great job and he's honestly super eerie the whole time. And plus that changeling design is just awesome. My least favorite was probably the Krampus one. It was the least fleshed out story of the group, and it kind of feels like they just threw the story in there so they can find an excuse for Santa and Krampus to fight at the end of the movie. Oh yeah, Santa and Krampus fight. And it's awesome. I'm gonna give this movie a solid A. If you like anthology movies like Trick or Treat, you'll definitely love this one. It's on a streaming site called Philo, and it's for free, so if you're interested, check it out. God, I spent long on that one. That's the first one too. Humbug. Okay, hear me out on this one. This movie is inadvertently one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my life. And it's also my favorite Christmas movie. Everyone knows the classic tale of the Christmas Carol. Ebenezer Scrooge is a Christmas hater and an overall just terrible human being. Humbug. That is until Christmas Eve when he's visited by the ghost of his only friend, Marley, who's there to tell him he's going to be visited by 3 ghosts tonight. The ghosts of Christmas past, present, and future. The ghost of Christmas past shows Scrooge a time when he was happy and full of life, and the exact moment where he chose money over happiness and love. The ghost of Christmas present shows him a bustling, happy city, getting ready for their favorite holiday, which is Christmas Day. He brings Scrooge to his only worker,
Bob Cratchit,
whom he pays so poorly that he can only afford to live in a rotting home and he can't afford to give his family a nice meal for Christmas. The ghost shows Scrooge Tiny Tim, a boy who has a serious illness and will not live much longer. That is, unless Scrooge changes his ways. And despite the boy actively dying, he lives life happy and to the fullest.
God bless us. Everyone.
And finally, the ghost of Christmas future, which was the scariest scene my child eyes had to witness. He shows Scrooge how people would react to his death, and nobody is sad that he's dead. They almost celebrate because he's dead. This wild trip causes Scrooge to change his ways. He becomes happier, more giving, and overall just a lovable guy. So this one's going to be a bit unfair because it is my favorite Christmas movie, so I'll just set this one right up here. Okay, there you go. I feel like this movie is way scarier than it should be. I remember watching it for the first time on ABC Family before it was Freeform. Can you guys believe that that was 8 years ago when they changed that? And I couldn't sleep that night because I thought the ghost of Marley was gonna come in my room, chains and all, and tell me, "You're gonna die tomorrow." I was terrified, man. And to not technically be a horror movie, this movie does a lot of things right. And it's a Disney movie. The suspense and jump scares alone are a lot better than most horror movies today. And each ghost is very creepy in their own right. Maybe it's the mysteriousness each of them have. The most terrifying of the three is, of course, the ghost of Christmas Future. Him looking like literal death, and the whole scene with the feral kids, and the very depressing realization that Tiny Tim could have lived if Scrooge was just a bit kinder. That really stuck with me as a kid, and I still think about this movie a lot to this day. It was also made in the strange era where they were making hyper-realistic CGI movies. Very uncanny, and that adds to the overall creepy vibe of the movie. Also, Jim Carrey is the best Scrooge, and nobody can change my mind. And you can find this movie on Disney Plus, of course.
Es ist Mitternacht. Du musst jetzt öffnen.
The Advent Calendar is a French horror film that was released in 2021 as a Shudder exclusive. Ava is a paraplegic who was a ballet dancer until she got into a really bad car accident. To cheer her up, her friend brings her a wooden Advent calendar from Germany. But this calendar comes with rules. Rule number 1, if you eat one candy, you must eat them all. Rule number 2, you must obey the calendar's rules until the last day. And rule number 3, don't discard the calendar, or I'll kill you. If she follows the rules and obeys the calendar, then by the end of the month, she'll be able to walk and dance again. But she has to do some pretty terrible things to get her legs back. I highly recommend you watch this movie for yourself. I personally would have never watched this movie if it wasn't recommended to me. I'm not against watching foreign horror films at all. I actually prefer J-horror most of the time, but I'm not really akin to the French horror films. But thankfully, somebody recommended this to me because holy shit, was it a good movie. It's a very simple concept to follow. You have to do what the calendar tells you, or you'll die. And it's very interesting seeing how different people treat Ava just because she's in a wheelchair. They either look down on her because, well, she can't walk and they see her as useless, or they kind of see her as like a hurt puppy and they have to do whatever they can to help her. I really don't want to spoil this movie because you really should just watch it and get the full experience yourself. It's an absolute roller coaster of emotions the whole time, and it keeps you on your toes the whole time too. Ish, the monster in this movie, and yes, there is a monster in this movie, is absolutely terrifying, and he can show up at any moment and you can't do anything to stop him. There's no chance at fighting him because he's just way too powerful. The cinematography in this movie is great. It's amazing. It looks beautiful. The way they use lights and camera angles to convey different emotions, it's just perfect. It's awesome. Like I've said multiple times, if you don't mind reading subtitles and you're not against watching a foreign film, give this one a watch. You will not regret it. I'm gonna throw this one an A, and of course this one is on Shudder. In 2016, we got a fun little movie called Better Watch Out. Ashley has been babysitting this kid Luke since he was 8 years old, and she thinks this night is gonna be just like all the others. But Luke has gotten a bit older now, and he's a little infatuated by Ashley. And he tries his best to, bang her. And when his plan of staging a home invasion doesn't go so well...
Carrot?
Dude?
He goes off the rails and he tries his best to ruin her life and kill her in the process. This movie really surprised me again. It's not exactly pee your pants kind of scary, but it would be really fun to watch with your friends or even family. Levi Miller absolutely kills the role at a psychopathic, spoiled rich kid. It makes it seem like he genuinely believes that he is incredibly smart and untouchable and he's gonna get away with everything he's doing. Also, Patrick Warburton is in this movie and everything he's in is legendary. I mean, he introduces us to Soren at Epcot. Come on. This might be a bit of a hot take, but I'm giving this one an A as well. It's really a ton of fun to watch, and I'll probably end up watching it again before the year's over. And you can check this movie out on Tubi or Peacock.
Hello?
Black Christmas 1974 is the classic Christmas horror movie that is still underrated to this day, even though it is one of the most influential horror movies of all time. And when you're watching it, you can see just how many other horror films have been inspired by this one, but the one thing that I can't get over is just how creepy this movie is for being 50 years old.
Who is it?
Taking place over the course of Christmas break at a sorority house where we get first-person perspective shots of the killer making his way into the house and making himself right at home, where he then begins to make phone calls to the women in the house from within the house.
I'm going to kill you.
And every single one of these phone calls creeps me out. And the whole time you're just trying to figure out, who is this? Why is he here? What's going on? Is everybody going to be okay? Are they going to be able to celebrate Christmas? Is this the end? What is going on? And the even bigger question that I have is, how is this made by the same guy that made A Christmas Story?
Don't you tell what we did, Agnes.
But one thing's for sure is that Bob Clark knows how to make a movie centered around Christmas. And there's only one place that I can put this and be happy, and that is absolutely in the S tier. Because if you are a horror fan, you absolutely have to watch this movie. And you also have to go and watch some more of King Newsme's videos. And thank you, King Newsme, for allowing jolly old Poltergeist to be in another one of your videos.
Dash away! Dash away! Dash away! Oh!
Christmas Evil was released in 1980, and it follows a man named Harry, a deranged man who's obsessed with Santa Claus. And he has been ever since he was a little kid, where he saw his mom and Santa getting a little frisky. 33 years later, Harry works on an assembly line for a toy factory, like a little elf in the North Pole. But in his free time, he spies on the children of the neighborhood, and he has his own naughty and nice list, with very detailed reasons for why each kid is on whichever list. Basically, the guy believes he's going to be the next true Santa Claus. One night at a company Christmas party, he discovers that the company has devised a donation scheme. They plan to donate a couple of toys to a local children's hospital. But production of the toys has to increase incredibly, and the employees have to pay for it out of their own pockets. And it's just to make the company look good. They're not even sure if each kid is going to get a toy. This angers Harry so much that he sneaks into the factory that night and fills a bag with a bunch of toys to give to the boys and girls. And on Christmas Eve, Harry glues a white beard to his face, which sends him into a fugue state. He now truly believes he is Santa Claus, and it is his duty to deliver the presents to the good boys and girls. So he hops in his very own sleigh that is disguised as a very festive van that he believes has been trained by Santa's reindeer. And he heads off to deliver toys to his family and the good boys and girls at the hospital. And on the street, he spots some coworkers, the same one that helped devise the evil plan. And he murders them right there on the spot. Which leads to a pretty wild night of murders and parents mobbing the poor guy until he flies into the moon listening to Christmas carols. So this was an interesting movie, to say the least. I like the descent into madness in this movie. You really do watch a man as he slowly goes insane, and you get to see what he experienced before and how he got to this point. And by slowly, I mean very slowly. This movie was very slow. But once things do pick up and Harry starts murdering people, you kind of just feel bad for the guy. He really does just want people to be good morally and socially. And the only ones who seem to be good morally and socially are the kids. Now, killing all the immoral people in a Santa suit probably wasn't the best way to solve the problem. But like a cop said in the movie, maybe it'll fix some people's attitudes. Because if they're bad, they get an axe to the face from Santa. This movie also looks really good. The cinematography is great. Especially that one scene with all the light up Santas as Harry runs down them. I really liked that scene. I thought that was really creative and cool. I actually really liked this movie. It was a really slow start and has a very weird ending, but I'm glad I got to experience it. So I'm gonna give this one a B, and it's free on Amazon Prime. In 2016, or 2017, we got a movie called The Elf. It follows a guy named Nick, and he inherited a toy shop from one of his family members that tragically got murdered. While cleaning out the toy shop, he found a very creepy little elf doll, which followed him home. Something's not right with this elf because it has a naughty list of people. Also a knife. Why does he have a knife? I don't know. He does look creepy though. Nick and his girlfriend Victoria have been dating for 3 whole months and she's ready for a ring. Already? Moving a little fast, don't you think? So she brings her family over to meet Nick for Christmas. Sadly, everybody in her family are on the elf's naughty list. And so are these carolers. I think everybody's on his naughty list. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I did not finish this movie. I couldn't stand it, man. I wanted to put a bad B movie on here just to have like a little variety here and there. I didn't want all of them to be A's and S's, you know? But I could not stand to watch this movie. Even the actors didn't seem like they wanted to be there. The only one that was trying was the actor who played Victoria. She was really trying to carry this movie and she was not doing a good job at that. Even the main character, Nick's acting method was boring. It's just so incredibly boring the whole time. I felt like I had been watching it for 3 hours and I looked at the timestamp and it had been 10 minutes. Also, the audio in this movie really sucks. The dialogue is so quiet the whole time. I had to blast the dialogue so I could hear anything. Then it'll blow your eardrums out with a jump scare noise. When the best parts of your movie is a bad CGI elf moving, you know you're in trouble. The Skull Santa was pretty cool though, I gotta say. That was a nice little jump scare I got right there. And the elf doll was actually pretty cute and creepy. I feel like they actually had something there. They just didn't know how to really execute it very well. So since this movie was so bad, I literally couldn't stand it. It's going on F tier, of course. And it's on Tubi if you want to try and take the elf gauntlet.
Gizmo.
Gremlins is a fantasy, comedy, horror film made by the famous Steven Spielberg in 1984. An inventor visits a Chinatown antique store to find a Christmas gift for his son Billy. He finds a cute small creature that the shop owner calls a mogwai, or devil in Cantonese. The man buys the mogwai, and the shop owner warns him to never let it see sunlight, never let it touch water, and don't feed it after midnight. He brings the little guy back home to his son, and they immediately name the cute dude Gizmo. Billy's friend visits him and accidentally spills water on the poor little guy, which makes him multiply like a cell. 5 more mogwai spawn out of him, and one of them tricks Billy into feeding them after midnight. The next day, they are in cocoons, and soon they turn into these creatures they call Gremlins. And the Gremlins start causing all sorts of havoc all over the town, even killing a bunch of people. Wait, is this a PG movie? The 80s were a different time. Billy and his friend slash love interest, Kate, try multiple times to kill all the Gremlins and fail every time until they find a lot of Gremlins in the local movie theater watching Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And they kill all them with a very violent explosion. Well, almost all of them. Stripe, the main gremlin, got lucky because he left to go get some candy before the explosion happened. But he doesn't live too much longer because Gizmo kills him with the sunlight, an absolute classic for the holiday and just movies in general. I've always appreciated kids horror because I feel like it's a lot harder to make kids horror because you have to be more creative to scare the kids. And this movie definitely used to scare me as a kid. The Gremlins are genuinely pretty creepy, especially when they first come around and they're creeping around that house and the lady murders like 3 of them and their green blood just kind of sprays everywhere. Especially when Stripe was in the Christmas tree. That scene, I had that burned in my brain for a second. The Gremlins are very creepy, but they're also the funniest little guys I've ever seen in my life. Like, they terrify a man that's scared of foreign engineering by driving a foreign tractor at him. That is so funny. They try and sing a nice little carol to an old lady who is obviously terrified of them. And out of every movie in the world, they choose to watch Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Why did they choose that one? It's such an odd choice. They're just funny little guys. You gotta love them. If they weren't so destructive, I probably would want one for myself. Guess I could get one like Gizmo. He's kind of docile and sweet, so everyone loves Gizmo. Obviously, this is an S-tier movie. It's a Spielberg classic that still holds up to this day. And you can watch this one on HBO Max.
Well, it sure ain't the Pillsbury fucking dope boy.
Released in 2005, GIngerDead Man was a straight-to-DVD movie distributed by Full Moon Features, who are very well known for their shitty B movies. In this movie, a girl named Sarah accidentally mixes the ashes of a deceased serial killer in her gingerbread mix, which turns the ash-filled dough into a raunchy, disgusting-looking gingerbread man, who has come to life to get revenge on Sarah because she's the reason he got the electric chair. But sadly, things don't go so well for him. So my first experience with GIngerDead Man was actually with one of my best friends, Tyler. When we were about 14, we watched GIngerDead Man and the Evil Bong, which was absolutely hilarious to us 14-year-old boys. But it's been almost 10 years since I've seen that movie. And this one too, and I've got to say that this movie really sucks. Oh my god. I feel like they spent more time focusing on Sarah and Amos flirting with each other than the actual raunchy GIngerDead Man. Played by Gary Busey, by the way. I wasn't expecting much for this movie to begin with, and it didn't even deliver that. It just really let me down. I'm sorry guys, but this one's going in D. But I might come back and talk about some of these wacky full moon feature movies. There's just so many goofy ass ones, I have to talk about them. But if you're interested in watching this, it's on Prime and Tubi.
You dumb little slut. You just made my naughty list.
This is a fairly new one. In 2023, we got It's a Wonderful Knife. And this one stars Justin Long, and I love Justin Long. This movie follows a girl named Winnie. Her and her friends are having a Christmas Eve party when a killer wearing all white kills multiple people at the party, including her best friend. Luckily, she saves her brother from the psychopath and the town from his grasp. And it's revealed that the killer was actually the mayor of the town, who was upset because he wanted to monopolize and control the town. After his death, Winnie just feels like things were a lot better before that night, and everything else would just be better without her. I mean, she lost her best friend, she doesn't make it into the college she really wanted to go to, and it turns out her boyfriend has been cheating on her for an entire year. She wishes that she was never born that night, and through the power of the Aurora Borealis, she gets transported into a parallel universe where she never existed. And the town is just a horrible place to be. Everyone's now doing very hard drugs. Her mom is now an alcoholic and is cheating on her dad constantly, even right in front of him. And her dad is just a shell of a human being. And even worse, her brother and all of her friends are dead. And even worse than that, the killer is still on the loose and has killed over 25 people over the year. So it's up to Winnie and her new friend Bernie to kill the killer angel so she can make it back home and have everything back to normal. This is yet another movie that really shocked me. I haven't heard much about this movie and it's pretty good. It retells the story of It's a Wonderful Life, but it adds a really cool killer that they call the Angel, which is also fucking cool. And the Angel always gives 100% to whatever he's doing, whether that's sprinting, falling, or killing. And when the dude kills people, he makes sure they're dead. He's also insanely creepy and surprisingly blends into a lot of things despite him wearing all white. This movie kind of tricks you because Winnie kills the killer at the beginning of the movie, but it goes back into a parallel universe and there's actually a twist inside the parallel universe that I kind of saw coming, but I didn't see coming for the longest time at least, so they got me there. I'm a little desensitized. I've seen too many horror movies. But if you haven't seen this movie and you like slashers that are kind of like Scream, you'll definitely like this one too. I'm gonna give this one an A. I watched this one on Shudder, but it's also on Hulu.
World's most pissed off snow cone.
Oh, I think we've all seen this one. In 1997, we got a wonderful little film called Jack Frost, which I accidentally saw as a kid when I was trying to look for and watch the 1998 Jack Frost film with Michael Keaton in it. And I'll tell you, it was not a fun surprise. A cop is transporting a very violent serial killer so conveniently named Jack Frost, and he's transporting him during a terrible snowstorm. Because the storm was so bad, the cop accidentally crashed into a truck of chemicals, which fuses with the serial killer and turns him into a disgusting, murderous, raunchy snowman who is on the path of revenge. Jack terrorizes the town, murdering anybody he can, because nobody expects a snowman, but when people realize it's because of the snowman, they try to kill him by blowing him up, and that doesn't work. So they shove him in a furnace and try to melt and evaporate him, but that doesn't work. So they try antifreeze, and that works, thank God. Starting to think he was invincible. So this movie is straight garbage. I think it's no secret that this movie is so bad. Everybody knows about this movie. Everybody has seen this movie. It's so incredibly goofy and stupid, and we've all seen The Scene, which was very unnecessary. Really does not need to be in the film. But this movie has a charm to it. It just sucks you in, and you can't stop watching it for some reason. I mean, I was glued to the screen, and I've seen it like 50 times. This movie is absolutely bananas. It barely makes sense most of the time, but the kills are pretty good in this movie, and it's kind of funny sometimes. I'll probably make a video about this movie because I can't imagine how anybody would think this was a good idea. But I'm gonna give this movie a D because I kind of like it and I hate that I kind of like it. And you can find this movie on pretty much any streaming service, but I watched it on Prime and I think it's for free on Tubi. In 2015, we got the beautiful movie Krampus. Krampus is a movie about the Engel family as they gather for a wonderful family Christmas. But of course, everybody knows how families get around Christmas. Little Max just wants Christmas to be like it used to be, but he has lost all hope in that, and he tells his family that he hates them. And he rips his letter to Santa to shreds and tosses it out the window. And later that night, a strange, severe blizzard hits the town. It knocks the power out, and very soon they discover that they are being pursued by the evil Krampus. I don't want to spoil too much of this movie because if you haven't seen it, you have to do yourself the pleasure of watching this wonderful movie. It's like a director and some writers woke up one day and said, let's make the best Christmas horror movie ever. And they were like, bet. And they succeeded. This movie balances humor, horror, and storytelling so well. You get these super terrifying scenes of these super grotesque, horrifying monsters. They're literally like bone-chilling and just creepy to look at. And then it'll cut to a dude fighting a cute little gingerbread man, and they're actively kicking the guy's ass. It's hilarious. I also have to mention the very sick claymation backstory. It's just in the middle of the movie and it comes out of nowhere and it shocked me and it's amazing. It's absolutely beautiful and so well made. The movie is also only PG-13, so you can absolutely watch it with your family. And I recommend you do so. I'm sure it'll be a lot of fun. This movie is going straight into S tier. It's an absolute must-watch Christmas movie for me now. And if you want to watch it, it's streaming on Peacock.
Merry Christmas, you green bitch!
Recently, there's been a trend of people turning beloved children's characters into horrific murdering monsters. And this movie is exactly that. The main one is a story about Newsville, not Whoville, a little mountain town that has the little girl named Cindy, no last name mentioned, who watched her mom die tragically to a green creature whom she was originally friends with, which traumatized her so much that she had to move away. Many years later, she returns to Newsville with her father. Now, nobody puts up any kind of Christmas decorations because the monster kills anybody with any sort of holiday spirit, whether that's accidentally or on purpose. Sadly, Cindy's dad was a little too jolly and set up a Christmas tree, so she had to tragically watch him die. And after spending about an hour of trying to get the police to help her investigate the murderous creature, she finally gives up and teams up with a man named Doc Zeus, totally doesn't sound familiar at all, who's been hunting the green one down for many, many years. And he's finally ready to put the beast to rest, only for her to realize that he was actually her friend all those years ago, and to forgive him in the end, which makes his heart grow 3 sizes, making his heart explode, and he dies. Yeah, they don't actually call him the Grinch in this movie. Not once. They actually avoid it like the plague. So I know people find this movie good in an ironic way, but I couldn't get into it. The kills are very bland and not very creative. The writing is quite horrible. It feels like they threw a script together in less than a week and then tossed it on screen. And the color grading in this movie really sucks. It hurts to look at. But I do think the Grinch makeup is really good. He's genuinely pretty creepy at times, and he's definitely the one carrying the movie. This movie's going into D. I can see why some people enjoy it, but it's really just not for me. And it's on Starz streaming service if you want to check it out. In 2007, we got the movie P2, and it's kind of a sleeper movie. I know I wasn't too excited to watch it because how scary can a girl being locked inside of a parking garage be? Well, I was wrong. The movie follows a successful businesswoman named Angela, and she's getting ready to visit her family on Christmas Eve after a long day of work. But her car won't start. Because it's so late, the whole building has been locked down. So she asks the security guard to help her upstairs so she can just call a cab and get home. Little does she know, the security guard Thomas is a bit obsessed with her. He chloroforms her, puts her in a nice dress, and chains her to a chair, and tries to have a nice little date with her. I think you can see where this is going. He seems only slightly insane for a little bit. That is until he brutally murders a coworker that was trying to force himself upon her at the Christmas party. Luckily, Angela escapes his grasp and hides for him while trying to call for help, which is kind of hard to do when you have no service, and while Thomas and his dog are looking for her. I highly recommend you watch this movie. It's free on Tubi, so you have no excuse. It's super intense the whole movie, and you truly really don't know what's gonna happen next. Wes Bentley, the guy who plays Thomas, plays him perfectly. At first, he seems like just a normal, nice guy. He even tries to help her jumpstart her car. But it turns out he's an overly obsessed man who will do anything to make this girl fall in love with him. He's also obsessed with Elvis, and you won't hear Blue Christmas the same after watching this movie. Probably won't be able to listen to it for about a week, actually. But there are times in this movie where Angela does something incredibly stupid, and you're like, why would you even do that? But then sometimes she does something that I would never even thought of in a million years, and she seems like the most genius person ever. It's just an emotional roller coaster the whole time. I'm gonna give this one an A, and like I said, it's free on Tubi, so check it out. In 2010, we got yet another sleeper film called Rare Exports. While digging into a mountain, some miners find something a little more than just dirt and rocks. They find sawdust, which leads this penguin-looking dude to believe that they found an ancient burial ground, and they have until Christmas Day to uncover it. Sadly, their mining is harming the local wildlife and townspeople. A group of locals are very upset about innocent wildlife being murdered, so they give the mining company a little visit, only to find they're not there anymore. But they did dig a mighty deep hole. Kind of reminds me of your mom. One little boy believes that they've dug up Santa Claus. But this Santa isn't the friendly AI Coca-Cola Santa Claus, no. This Santa kills naughty kids.
Se antaa tuhmille rissua niin, että henki lähtee ja veri vaan roiskuu.
But nobody believes him. That is until Santa falls into his father's wolf trap. Santa doesn't die by falling in the trap though, but he is rather violent and is trying to kill the little boy. So to protect the little boy, they chain the Santa up and cover him in a tarp. Thank God, I was tired of looking at old man peen. And they offer to sell the Santa to the penguin-looking dude. Turns out this isn't actually Santa. The real Santa is much worse. The dude they trapped is actually a part of an army of elves who are there to protect the real Santa Claus. Only they might be out of a job real soon. This movie is incredible. I feel like I'm glazing every movie on this list. It's super underrated. This one tells a very intense and unique story. It kind of tricks you into thinking there's gonna be this creepy, skinny, naked Santa running around killing all these kids. But it puts an insane twist on it and then turns that one scary naked Santa into hundreds of scary naked Santas. And the elves are honestly insanely creepy. I did not like them. They do not make a sound the whole movie, but they're insanely quick and strong. And I'm sure a bunch of old men were very cold during the filming of this. I do really like that they did not go with the evil Santa route. It's been done again and again and again and again. Hell, there are 5 movies on this list that have that exact premise. This movie kind of lumps Santa and Krampus into one being. And who knows, they might be the same being. You also get to watch as the father and son evolve through the movie. At first, the son is a wimpy little boy who carries around a stuffed toy dog that he talks to, and the dad treats his son like a baby. He never listens to anything his son has to say, and he kind of just yells at him and punishes him whenever he can. But you can tell that it's because they recently lost his wife, and he's probably scared of losing his son as well, and he's having issues being a single father. But by the end of the movie, they both turn into badasses. The father finally listens to his son and lets him take control, and he takes good control. I mean, they get shit done. It's a wonderful movie. I highly recommend watching this one as well. It's mostly in Finnish, but that shouldn't matter. It's a great movie, definitely worth your time. It's going in A tier for me. It could use less old man wiener though. And I watched this one on Peacock.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Santa Claus.
Santa Slay is a horror comedy film that came out in 2005 and stars WWE star Bill Goldsberg as a buff Santa Claus. The story goes that Santa is actually Satan's son. Try to say that 5 times fast. And he used to go around the world killing a bunch of people in a day they used to call the Day of Slay. That is until Santa was challenged by an angel who disguised himself as an old man. He challenged him to a simple game. All they had to do was slide a rock on ice and get it as close to the hole as they can without knocking it in. If Santa wins, the old man would get sent down to his father Satan for an eternity of pain and suffering. But if the old man won, Santa would have to deliver presents to good boys and girls for the next 1,000 years. Santa was so cocky that a mortal could not beat him, so he went first, and he got the rock as close as he possibly could to that hole. But when the old man went, he knocked Santa's rock into the hole, making the old man the winner. But sadly, those 1,000 years are up, and Santa is terrorizing the town of Hell Township. It's an insane name for a town. And it's up to our main character, Nicholas, his kooky grandpa, and his girlfriend to defeat Santa, and hopefully kill him before he kills anybody else. I did not expect to actually like this movie. It looked so stupid, so dumb. I freaking loved it. It's really hard to get a Christmas horror comedy right. The Mean One is a good example of them failing at that. But this movie wasn't afraid to go all out and be wacky. I mean, there's even a point in this movie where kids' heads get blown off because Santa delivered them bombs. But it's not like a gory, gross thing. It's like a scene out of Looney Tunes. Santa also kills a guy by tasing him in the balls. It's awesome. I think scenes like that is what makes this movie work. But it also knew when to chill out and tell a pretty decent story as well. It's not Godfather-like writing, it's still very silly, but it works for the vibes of the movie. And it's better than most of the Hallmark movies your grandmother has been watching since November 1st. The main character, Nicholas, is such a lovable and funny guy. And he's kind of relatable to any awkward guy who doesn't know what to do when there's a pretty girl around. And Santa is perfect. He is so funny, so intense. If you haven't seen this film, just imagine the Santa from Rise of the Guardians. Imagine if that Santa went on a killing spree. Insane, right? He also has a massive buffalo he calls his hell deer, and it is probably the coolest thing in this movie to me. If you like goofy, dark comedies, I would definitely give this movie a shot. I was hooked by the intro, mainly because it had Fran Drescher in it, but it perfectly encapsulates what the rest of the movie is gonna be like. So if you watch the intro and you're hooked, you'll like the rest of it. I'm giving this movie a B. I'm still gonna be a little fair. It's not the best movie in the world. I just had fun watching. This one is on Starz streaming service for free, but I rented it on Amazon Prime for just $1, so.
But Mother Superior, it's Santa Claus.
In 1984, we got the iconic Silent Night, Deadly Night. This movie was so controversial that it was actually pulled from theaters a week after it was released. But in that 1 week, it actually grossed $2.5 million on a $700,000 budget. So I'd say that was a bit of a success. Since then, they've had a whole movie series that has gained a really big cult following. And some of you hooligans in the comments wanted me to do all 5 of the movies. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not doing all that. This movie stars Billy Chapman, a boy who watched his mother and father both get murdered by a Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, at the ripe age of 5 years old. He was taken to an orphanage where he was raised by a strict nun named Mother Superior. And Christmas time is the worst for poor Billy because seeing all the Santas and Christmas stuff just brings back the tragic memories of the Christmas Eve night. Also, seeing boobs brings back the memories. There's a lot of boobs in this movie. When Billy turns 18, he gets hired to work at a toy shop where they force him to dress up as Santa, which Billy really isn't excited about. After a very long shift of being Santa Claus, Billy finds one of his coworkers, Andy, trying to force himself upon another coworker who he has a crush on. The sight of this reminds him of that horrific night and sends him into a fugue state where he kills the both of them before he moves on to terrorize the rest of the city and to kill anyone who is naughty. Mainly just people who are having sex because boobs scare him. The next day, Billy heads over to the orphanage to try to kill Mother Superior, but he's luckily shot before he can hurt her. I'll be honest, I've never seen these movies. Of course I know about them. They're iconic. I've just heard they're straight garbage and I really didn't want to watch them. I have to be in a certain mood to watch garbage movies. But this one wasn't so bad. Sure, the acting is atrocious at times, and I feel like whenever they needed to fill time with something, they just made somebody have sex. I think I saw more boobs in this movie than I've seen in my whole life, which isn't a lot, so. The kills were pretty cool though. I liked the one where he hung the girl using the deer antlers. That one was very creative and fun. And the beginning of this movie is insanely slow, very slow, but once Billy starts killing, things obviously really pick up. I'm gonna give this movie a B. It's very fun. Give it a watch, especially if you like titties. And you can rent this one on Prime, or just watch it on YouTube.
Garbage Day!
So since I talked about the first one, I felt like I was obligated to talk about Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, which was released 3 years later in 1987. And unlike the first one, this one was a complete flop in the box office. It also had a quarter of the budget the first one had. So I'm banking on the studio probably thought that having a second one would just bring them a lot of cash. And it might have if they bothered to make a good movie. In this one, we meet Billy's little brother, Ricky, who's in a psychiatric hospital for a few murders of his own. He's talking to a psychiatrist about his brother's many murders that we saw in the first movie. And no, it's not like a quick recap to remind people what happened in the first movie. It's a full 40 minutes of the movie. They literally just re-show you the previous movie for the first 40 minutes of this movie. You do get small clips of Ricky trying to be a badass, but he really sucks at it.
Fuck off, Doc.
When we finally get to Ricky's story, we learn that he was adopted by a loving family. And he has similar triggers like his brother, except his are nuns and boobies. Look, I'm just saying what I see. I'm saying what I see. And he was really good about being not violent for a long time, until his adoptive father sadly passed away, and then he saw this guy trying to force himself on this girl. This brings the violence out, and unlike his brother, he kills anybody being naughty, whether it's having sex or beating people up. He's got hands for you. Luckily, Ricky finds this girl named Jennifer and they start dating. Sadly, her ex-boyfriend is a bit obsessed with her, and he really won't leave her alone. One day, Ricky and Jennifer go on a walk where they run into her ex, and the dude starts to just brag about all the times they did the dirty. And Ricky does not want to hear this, so he obviously goes on a killing spree, starting with the two. And yes, this is the scene with the scene.
Garbage Day!
Huh? No!
Luckily, he does get arrested for doing this, but when we get back to the meeting, we see that he has killed his psychiatrist, he has escaped to kill Mother Superior and finish what his brother started. He finds her house pretty easily, surprisingly, and she lives in house 666, which no nun would live in that house. Probably the most unbelievable thing in this movie, and a dude got electrocuted by his tooth. She does give the dude a run for his money, but sadly, he does get the upper hand. And just like his brother, the cops shoot him until he's dead. Or is he dead? So, no surprise to anybody, this movie's hot garbage. Absolute poop. Shit would be offended if you called it this movie. I mean, the first 40 minutes of this movie is a recap of the previous movie. Why did I watch the first one then? Why didn't I just start with the second one? The dialogue is also atrocious. It's almost cartoonishly bad. At some points, I was wondering if a child wrote this movie. Eric Freeman, the dude that played Ricky, was trying so hard to be a badass, but it just was not working for the guy. I mean, he is kind of ripped though. And the kills in this movie were pretty lame, minus the umbrella. I like the umbrella one. There is just absolutely nothing that saves this movie in my eyes. Maybe the first 40 minutes because it's a decent movie then, but this movie is going straight into F, and it's free on Prime if you're interested.
It's a Terrifier Christmas.
This year we got the third installment of the popular franchise Terrifier. Sienna is back after her horrific Halloween night with her brother, and killing the infamous serial killer Art the Clown. She goes to a mental institution where she is deemed mentally healthy enough to move in with her aunt and uncle and cousin, and she tries to rebuild her life while her brother is off at college. Little does she know, Art the Clown actually didn't die that Halloween night. He's now on a Christmas rampage, and he's out to kill Sienna and her whole family, because she is the only one strong enough to defeat him with her magic sword. This movie is still fairly new. I think it's still in theaters, so I don't want to spoil anything for any of the fans, but I'll be the first to tell you, I'm not the biggest fan of these movies. I know now it has a really massive fan base and some really die-hard fans that are going to be very upset about my ranking, but I've never really been a fan of movies that try to be overly gory just for shock value. But there is an underlying story about demons taking over victims' bodies that's keeping me curious enough to keep up with the story. Sadly, this movie barely touched on that, and for most of the 2-hour run, we just watched as Art gruesomely kills a bunch of people, including children, and using various methods of killing, whether it's an axe in a bed or a chainsaw to the boobies, which I'm not complaining about. I feel like Art is the only reason people go to watch these movies, and I actually really like the dude. I like when he's goofy. He needs to be goofy more often, less killing, more goofy. How about that? Sadly, I wasn't very impressed with this movie, but it's still a whole lot better than most of the other movies on this list, so I'm gonna be fair and give it a C. And this one's still in theaters, I think. Let me see. I just looked it up. The movie is not in theaters anymore, and don't ask me where I watched it. I have an honorable mention for The Children. I tried looking for this movie. I couldn't find it on anything to watch it, and I don't want to spend nearly $80 on a DVD just to watch it for one video. But I did watch the trailer, and it does look like a pretty interesting movie, so hopefully it comes out on some kind of streaming service soon. And that's my tier list. Let me know of any movies I've missed on this tier list. I know there's a lot of them. And let me know in the comments if you'd rank anything differently. And remember, this is just my opinion on these movies. You should definitely watch all these movies to get your own opinions on them. Don't trust some white guy on the internet to give you your opinions. I have a Patreon. The $5 members get bonus content plus videos a day early, maybe some pictures of my cats, and a Discord server, also your name right here on screen. I'm also going to lump in YouTube members for that now. Like the video if you liked the video. Thank you for watching the video all the way through. I appreciate you all, and peace.